lives in the sunlit world of what he believes to be reality. But there is, unseen by most, an underworld, a place that is just as real, but not as brightly lit. A dark side.
Bienvenidos, Fright fans across the globe. You got Jaime En Fuego here for the horror show. Welcome, amigos. This is some ongoing coverage, the third part, in fact, that I'm doing specially for the month of October here in the horror show for Tales from the Darkside. That's right, man. An anthology horror series that George A. Romero developed, and I did in 2015 coverage of the entire Tales from the Crypt series, which was directly done from the EC Comics that Mr. Gaines did back in those awesome days before the comic code came in and became crazy. But gotta say, I was very interested for a just continuing coverage and just like getting a little more insightful checking out Tales from the Darkside, because whereas Tales from the Crypt started in '89 and I was totally alive and ready and awake to check out those, I was too young when the Darkside came out. After doing Creepshow, George A. Romero was basically like, I'm really getting this itch, man, for anthology horror and for telling scary tales similar to the Twilight Zone, similar to Outer Limits and various others. And the 80s were like this prime time for anthology horror. I mean, between Freddy's Nightmares and the Twilight Zone reboot, and obviously Tales from the Crypt eventually coming, and Tales from the Darkside, and then later on Monsters, and then Spielberg's Amazing Stories, and you know, the list just goes on and on, as I often like to say. And that's for the sheer fact that in the 80s, it was totally in vogue and really sweet that we had so many of these just self-contained stories. You know, I love Stephen King short story collections, various other authors, and it's funny because in this third bit of coverage here for the horror show of my month-long Tales from the Darkside full series review, it's funny how Stephen King is not getting the top distinction today. Neither is Tom Savini, the director of another episode here. So anytime it's Infuegotainment coverage or horror show coverage and you've got me running the show, it's essentially bueno, malo, and feo. Good, bad, and ugly. And surprisingly, the king, El Rey, you know, the guy at the top of that dark tower, he doesn't win out today. You know, and so we're going to jump into our first episode, the Bueno episode, and this one is very simply entitled Slippage. David Patrick Kelly stars in this, and you may recognize him from The Warriors, from The Crow. He was also in Twin Peaks and a couple other projects that Mr. David Lynch did, and he's going to be in the revival too. So he is essentially a guy who is kind of doubtful about certain things, and in the process, a lot is disappearing around him. So he's married, has a lovely wife who he has wrapped around his finger, but it's just very strange because he almost seems to be disappearing. You know, he's becoming more, what's the word I'm looking for? He's just like going into solitude creatively. And he's an artist and he has these, rampant deadlines. And right off the bat, you realize, oh, his paycheck didn't come. And then after that, you realize, oh, that's really weird. The new job that he's trying to get, they can't find, his portfolio, and his birth certificate has been, erased and disappeared. And so it's a very weird just analysis on how quickly people can fade away when, they're not in our everyday really direct settings and stuff like that. Michael Gornick directs. He's an old protege of George A. Romero. He was the cinematographer on both Day and Dawn of the Dead, and then he directed the second Creepshow. Romero did not do the second or the third. God, don't even talk about that third Creepshow. It had nothing to do with the original guys. This was a big surprise for me because it was not super scary, but it was just, it hit you right in the feels, man, as my co-host on the horror show Cecil would say. It was very just arduously emotional, and just somebody realizing how they can easily be forgotten, and it's a very good character analysis, and it's very touching. And yeah, I left the viewing experience feeling just very, I don't know, like I was in a contemplative state. So it was good. Easily deserving of the Bueno distinction in this particular one. Gornick actually went on to direct another episode, which we're going to be talking about in this same video. Awesome sauce, right? So now we get into the Malo episode. If you gotta have a good one, you gotta have a bad one before the ugly is exhibited before the world. And so the Malo is where I'm going to shock everybody. because of the fact that I see people all over the interwebs talking about the fact that this is one of the best Tales from the Darkside episodes ever. Doesn't hold up for me, unfortunately. This one is called Inside the Closet. And we're thinking boogeyman status, right? There's got to be something dwelling in that closet, something evil, something creepy, something just off the wall insane. And especially with Tom Savini directing, man, and then Michael McDowell doing the script. He did a bunch of Tales from the Darkside episodes, tons of other rad stuff, including my very favorite episode from the first season of Tales from the Crypt, Lava, Come Hack to Me. So good. And so with all this talent behind the proceedings, the story of a college student coming to live with a veterinary, instructor, professor of some sort, you would think that, okay, this has Savini directing, great writer behind it, it's gotta be amazing. And this is one of the few times where not every episode was bad. This is not a bad episode, but of the 3 that I'm covering in this particular installment, it had to be the bad one because of the fact that there is a creature of some sort. She thinks it's a rat, but it's most definitely not a rat. This young lady who moves into this spot, and the professor guy, the veterinary professor, is just very strange with her and is like, okay, as long as you're not making loud noise and doing this and doing that, he lets her move in. And immediately she finds out that there is something amiss. There is a weird creature dwelling in this strange little hobbit door that is a closet inside of her room. And Fritz Weaver plays the lead, and you probably recognize him from The Crate, but also the young lady is played by Roberta Weiss, and you probably recognize her from The Dead Zone, a little action with Mr. Kristopher Walken. And so, not a bad episode, nothing that I would not recommend to watch, because this is probably the best bad episode, the best MALO episode that I have got to spotlight here in the 3 installments that I've done so far. So now to move on to the Feo. What exactly could the Feo be? Where is this ugliness going to come into play? And so there is an episode written by Stephen King originally. It's called The Word Processor of the Gods, and that is the one that is our 3rd and final bit of coverage today. It was originally a short story in a 1983 issue of Playboy magazine, which is kind of amusing. And it was eventually collected in this little trade bit. Yeah, check it out. Let's see the camera actually focus proper. Skeleton Crew, man. Awesome 2nd collection of books by Mr. Stephen King. And so The Word Processor of the Gods was in 1985 collected in that. But in between those 2 years, in 1984, it was an episode of Tales from the Darkside. Once again, Michael Gornick is directing, and so I actually really enjoyed this much better than people on IMDb and various other sites that I saw commented upon it. I always thought that despite being a tried and true, bit of write something and it becomes reality, or type something or whatever, it's almost like Death Note for millennials, And so the lead guy in this is honestly one of the things that makes the entire episode much better than the source material. Sorry, Stephen King, being a tried and true, trope of sorts, you did not necessarily make it your own. I felt like it was made its own by Mr. Bruce Davison playing the lead, who is a writer, who, kind of a writer, trying to be one. He does not want to call himself an author, even when somebody calls him an author in the storytelling. But yeah, he's like, I could expand upon my output of material so much more exponentially if I had this word processor. And so his nephew, if I'm not mistaken, is the one who passes away and puts this word processor together. Word processors, young ladies and gents, is basically what preceded computers as far as just digital data entry that you could print and that you had a screen to do it upon, and so on and so forth. And so I was one of those kids who actually had a father who was a school teacher and got a word processor before getting a computer. So this is funny, and it's ugly for the sheer fact that there is much more so than even in my episode 2 coverage. There's kind of an aversion and a reluctance to accept just digital expansion and, technology improving, and there is just a fear and that sort of reluctance and everything, like I mentioned. And so that's the weird thing about this, and that's what I personally feel to be ugly. But It was very well acted. This could have easily been the Bueno episode. And Davison has been in so much stuff, my friends. He was in 99 and 44 100ths Pure Horror, a great later Tales from the Crypt episode. He was the OG Willard, the original one, man, before Crispin Glover took over. He was an apt pupil. He was in The Crucible. He was also Senator Kelly in those first 2 X-Men movies, man, which might have been the best ones of the entire series. Well, aside from Days of Future Past, which I love, but that's not necessarily horror. Kelly is a fantastic actor. He even did some later Stephen King adaptations with the Kingdom Hospital series and stuff. And so, yeah, his performance elevates this material and makes it a good ugly, a bueno feo, as I would like to say, you know, in the fact that there is this ugly fear of technology. And yeah, this could have easily been the Bueno episode, as I mentioned. So I gotta extend a grande gracias to all of you Fright fans across the globe that are checking out my no frills, you know, here at the En Fuegotainment office's coverage of Tales from the Dark Side. I'm doing one of these episodes every night. So I watch 3 episodes on one evening, and then the next night you get to see the review. So I am encouraging all of you guys to start checking out Tales from the Dark Side with me. That's the funnest part about this. Let's comment, let's discuss, let's share. October is my favorite month of the year, hands down, not just because my birthday is in September, but because it's frightastic here in the Arizona desert. The weather is just getting so beautiful. So yeah, I encourage all of you to like, share, subscribe, comment. Let's get involved in this journey that I am in the midst of. It's been a lot of fun so far. 3 episodes a day. That's how we're covering it. And so I've been Jaime En Fuego. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And also be sure to show that same type of support for us here at The Horror Show. Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Yeah, bring it upon us.
So until mañana, the dark side is always there, waiting for us to enter, waiting to enter us. Until next time, try to enjoy the daylight. And remember, stay scared.
And listen to Sanitation Squad.